The first sound was the wind. Not a gentle whistle, but a tearing shriek that carried grit sharp enough to sting the eyes. It dragged smoke through the air, carried the bitter smell of blood and gunpowder. A crow lifted from the fence post, wings black against the silver sky, its call splitting the silence that followed. Tell me, have you ever watched a man's pride burn faster than the fire at his back? He had. His name was Samuel Hale, and once he'd believed in steady work, in a roof built with his own hands, in the weight of a wedding band on his finger. That was before betrayal cut him open like a dull knife, before loss left him with silence where laughter should have lived. Tonight, silence pressed against him again, only broken by the wind and the slow creak of the body swaying from the cottonwood tree. A hanged man. Rope gnawing into bark. Boots pointing at nothing. Samuel did not look away. You couldn't, not from something like that. The body twisted when the storm pushed, head lolling as if it wanted to whisper the names of men still breathing. The dust caught the corpse's coat, snapping it like a flag, and for a moment Samuel swore the dead man lifted his hand. The prairie around him was no comfort. Dry grass lay flattened, beaten by wind. The barn roof in the distance shuddered, sheets of tin flapping like broken wings. Horses screamed in their stalls, hooves cracking wood, eyes rolling white with panic. The land itself seemed hungry, each gust stripping away what little hope men tried to anchor here. He pulled his hat lower, though it did nothing against the dust. His mouth tasted of iron. Whether from blood, his own bitten tongue, or the storm itself, he couldn't tell. What he knew was this: life out here did not forgive. It tested and it crushed. Yet beneath the weight of storm and memory, another sound rose. A hammer striking wood. Not the random clatter of debris, but a pattern, steady as a heartbeat, someone alive working against the dark. He turned, scanning through the haze until he saw her. A woman, hair whipped loose by the wind, shoulders set firm as she boarded up the window of a half-collapsed homestead. Small frame, stubborn hands. Each nail she drove into the wood rang louder than the storm's roar, as if she dared the land to swallow her whole. Samuel's chest tightened, not with desire, not yet, but with recognition. The same defiance that once burned in him flickered in her eyes. And though the hanged man swayed behind him, though the land bared its teeth, he felt the slow pull of something he thought long dead. Fate, maybe. Or a crueler thing. The storm pressed harder. Dust clawed at the land, rattling the loose shutters and making every nail groan in protest. Samuel Hale stood a long moment between the swaying corpse behind him and the woman ahead. The dead whispered of endings, the living of a chance he hadn't asked for. He shifted his weight, boots sinking in mud made by the storm's sudden rain. For a man who'd buried 2 children and a wife beneath dry earth, moving toward another soul felt heavier than any coffin he had lowered. The woman drove another nail into the splintered frame. Her arms trembled not from weakness but from stubborn refusal to yield. She paused, lifted her head, and caught him watching. The storm wrapped around them, and in that silence of locked gazes, Samuel felt the sharp stab of recognition. Loneliness mirrored back at him. She spoke first, voice low but cutting through the wind. You gonna stand there all night? His throat was raw, but the words came. Depends. You need help? The hammer in her hand lowered, though she didn't let it go. A man don't usually ask. He just takes the work. Something in her tone, half warning, half invitation, pulled him closer. He stepped toward the house, each stride deliberate, like testing ground that might give way. Inside, the air was thick with dust and wood smoke. A single lamp burned on a table, flame shivering. Children's shoes lay by the hearth, too small to belong to anyone but ghosts of the recent past. He noticed the neat row of them, some patched, some worn through. He didn't ask, but the ache in his chest told him the answer. She had lost too. I can brace the roof, he said. Storm'll rip it clean if it ain't tied. She set the hammer down, finally meeting his eyes. Name? Samuel Hale. A flicker of something passed over her face. Recognition or just the weary acceptance of another drifter. She straightened, brushing hair from her cheek. Eliza Carter. This is my place. He nodded once, then set to work. Together, in silence broken only by the storm, they braced the sagging roof and boarded windows. Their hands brushed once when both reached for the same plank. Neither spoke, but the silence thickened, alive with all the things neither dared name. When the worst of the wind eased, Eliza poured him water. He drank slow, every swallow heavy in his throat. She sat opposite him, arms wrapped around herself, though the fire burned warm. "You travel alone?" she asked. "Always. Family?" The word cut deep. He set the tin cup down hard enough to rattle. "Not anymore." Her gaze softened, though her voice stayed steady. "Then you know what it's like." The children's shoes glowed in the firelight, shadows stretching long across the floor. Samuel did not ask how many had worn them, or how many graves the woman had stood over. He didn't need to. Law spoke without tongues. The storm outside died to a restless whisper. In the silence that followed, the hanged man swayed in his mind, boots dangling against a horizon that offered no answers. Yet here, in the battered house of a woman who looked at him without fear, Samuel felt the faintest shift inside himself, like a locked door catching on its rusted hinge. Eliza rose, taking the lamp in her hand. She paused at the doorway, half-turned toward him. "Storm's done for now. Doesn't mean the night's safe." Samuel's hand rested on the grip of the revolver at his hip. His reply was quiet, certain. "Nothing ever is." And with that, the silence stretched, promising more than either dared admit. The lamp's flame trembled as Eliza held it, casting her shadow long against the wall. Samuel rose slowly, boots dragging on the worn floorboards, as if every step forward risked waking ghosts neither of them had the strength to face. Outside, the storm had left the world raw. Rain clung to the earth in streaks, and the wind's howl had softened into the far-off cries of coyotes. Yet the silence that followed was no comfort. It was the kind of silence that waited for trouble. Samuel leaned against the doorframe, scanning the yard. "That body on the cottonwood," he said. "You know him?" Eliza's jaw tightened. "I know what he was." "A warning. From who?" She set the lamp down. Her hands curled against the table edge, knuckles pale. "Men who think a widow's land is theirs for the taking. They come, they threaten, they leave things behind. Like that." The words carried no tremor, but Samuel heard the weight buried beneath them. She had faced them before, alone. "You kept them out this long," he said, voice rough, her gaze lifted, steady, unflinching. "Barely, and I can't anymore." "Not with—" She stopped, eyes flicking to the row of children's shoes by the hearth. Her throat worked. "Not with them gone." Samuel looked at the shoes, at the firelight bending around them. The ache inside him echoed hers. He thought of two small graves on a ridge, wind forever sweeping across the stones, and of the woman he had lowered into the earth without a word left to say. For a moment, silence filled the room like smoke. Then Eliza's voice came again, quieter, stripped bare. "I asked the Lord for help." Not another ghost. Samuel stepped closer. His hand brushed the back of hers. Rough skin against rough skin. The touch was brief, accidental by all appearances, but neither of them pulled away. Before he could speak, a sound cracked across the yard. A horse's whinny. Boots splashing mud. Low voices, muffled but close. Samuel's body went rigid. Eliza snatched the lamp down to a dim glow. "They're back," she whispered. Samuel's revolver was in his hand before she finished the word. He slipped to the window, peering through a slit in the boards. 3 figures stood by the cottonwood, the hanged man twisting above them. One of the riders spat in the dirt. Another pointed toward the house. "They'll test you tonight," Samuel said, voice low, calm. "They want to know if you'll fold." Eliza's shoulders stiffened, though her hands trembled where she held the lamp. "And will I?" He looked at her then, not at the fear, but at the defiance shining through it. A strength that matched his own, though forged from loss and fire. He holstered the gun, only to draw it again, a silent promise. "Not while I'm here." The next minutes blurred into the storm's echo. Shouts outside. A stone crashing through the window. Samuel's reply, sharp and fast. The revolver barking thunder that sent the riders scattering. Dust and smoke filled the room, children's shoes rattling where they sat by the hearth. When silence returned, it came heavy and whole. Eliza stood in the center of the room, chest heaving, eyes fixed on him. "Why help me?" Samuel's answer was plain. "Because once I prayed for someone to stand beside me. No one came." His voice cracked. "I ain't leaving you to the same." For the first time, her face softened, lines of fear easing into something fragile, something alive. She stepped closer, so near he could see the reflection of firelight in her eyes. Neither reached for the other. but the space between them pulsed with all that might come. Outside, the cottonwood creaked, its burden swaying in the night wind. A warning, a reminder, and a witness. Yet inside that battered house, in the glow of dying fire and new silence, Samuel Hale felt what he thought the earth had stolen from him forever, the beginning of a different life. One built not on forgetting, but on daring to hope again. The storm had passed. Something else had begun.